Well, next, let's check in on markets. And joining us is a special guest this week here on Market Journal from the Terrain team is Matt Clark. As Matt, we visit about kind of the long-term prospects and the forecast of what's going to be happening in the agriculture sector, in particular grains, as you and I are visiting today. Timely topic with Commodity Classic. And gosh, over the years, it seems like we continue to talk about U.S. agriculture meeting the growing population, but a recent report that you and your team penned shows that could soon change.
Yeah, so one of the key focuses of Terrain is thinking about that 5 to 30 year outlook, which I know it feels a long ways away, but let's talk about it a bit. You made a really good point that if you start back maybe the 1990s forward, we've talked about feeding the world, and exports have been great for U.S. ag, and that's come alongside a growing population. And for a long time, we talked about how population would continue to grow throughout the 21st century. We might reach that 12, 13 billion people number. The research at Terrain indicates that we may not be that far away from peak population. In fact, our research says, hey, it may be more like 2065, which again, it's not that far away. If you think about a 30-year land note today, that's going to bump up pretty close. If you think about a new farmer today, hopefully they're still farming in 2065. So some changes we think coming forward is really going to be that demographic piece for U.S. ag.
What could that mean for the grain markets, or in particular the grain commodities, as you've looked into this?
Yeah, I think what I'd really want to emphasize with farmers is it doesn't mean it's negative, it doesn't mean it's bad, it doesn't mean that exports are going to go down. If you think about countries such as Japan, South Korea, China, they've already experienced peak population. Yet, if you think about specifically Japan and South Korea, they've been great export partners, even in the face of that. So we have a runway here where I don't think exports go down because of population. But if you go 10 years out from now, more than 60% of our soybeans are currently going to countries that will be in decline. So how do we start to reposition that current portfolio? How do we think about trying to get into new markets that are growing? Most of the markets that we aren't in today, if you think about Africa and India, there's a lot of struggles getting in there. There is some value though in long-term growth. Now in the longer phase, as all of those countries start to experience population decline, there's a real question of how do we start producing higher value products? How do we take that similar route to corn that 30 plus years ago they exported mostly bulk. Today they export a lot of the ethanols, a lot of the oils, a lot of the starches, a lot of the syrups. How do we do that with some of our other commodities to really gain that value here and export high value products?
It's going to paint the picture you're laying out. In particular, let's maybe talk about soybeans, because you outlined where corn is at the moment. What do you see for opportunities for soybeans?
I think when I listen to the American Soybean Association and soybean export groups, I hear a lot of what I heard from corn 20 plus years ago of, hey, why don't we crush that value here? Why don't we build that demand here so we have domestic outlooks, but also start to export some of those high value products, whether that's a biodiesel, whether that's a meal, whether that's the soy oil. Remains to be seen exactly what part of that will take off first, but I see a lot of parallels there for growing that demand long term.
How about for wheat?
Wheat's a little bit more tough, right? So almost, not all, but a very large percentage of our exports in wheat are bulk.
Yeah.
Wheat also faces the problem of most other countries can grow wheat, and so sometimes they don't have the comparative or absolute advantage in the market. There again, they've got to start thinking about how do we grow some of those markets that are growing, so whether that is in Africa specifically, you've seen wheat put a big emphasis on that. How do we grow that to capture their population increase, while at the same time thinking about some of those higher value products that we put in. Maybe it's the high protein stuff, maybe it's more into the doughs and the mixes that only we can do. It's going to be a little bit of a different runway for wheat than it will be for soybeans, certainly.
So based on what I've heard you talk about, it's not like you're saying you need to stop growing X, Y, or commodity on your farm, but instead think about bigger picture, the industry and what they're exporting. Is that a fair way to look at it?
That's a great way to. It's not doom and gloom. If you and I were to compare how we farmed 30 days ago, or 30 years ago to today, we'd say, oh my gosh, it's way different. Same is going to be true 30 years from now. It's going to look way different. How do we prepare now to make sure that we hit those targets for long-term success? Some of that's going to be finding new export markets. A lot of it's going to be rethinking our product mix. A lot of it's going to be rethinking how do we position today to meet that future demand. And I think our trade associations are working on that.
Yep.
You certainly hear it in the undertones, and I think for the farmer, you're going to hear more and more about that over the next 12 to 14, 24 months out.
It's an interesting series you all are working on with the terrain team. Let me ask you this, though, as you look at kind of the grain markets in general. What else is catching your eye right now?
I think it's fair to say it's been a struggle the last couple of weeks. And we have to have empathy and an understanding of that, too. Obviously, especially the last week has been hard. And if anyone puts out their cash flow, it's going to look tough, right? I think what I've been trying to relay is at Farm Credit, we understand that. So terrain is part of Farm Credit. We understand where that is at. We understand sticking with through this time is going to be an important thing to do. Also, too, understanding that, hey, this isn't going to be a type of marketing season where the market comes to you. You're going to have to go to the market when those opportunities exist. And it could happen in a snap moment like we saw last year, where we had some planting issues and all of a sudden, snap, the market was better and then it faded. Could be that. We don't know. If we knew, obviously, you and I wouldn't be here. But I think it's going to be one of those years where your marketing hat is always going to have to be on, because it's not like we can just easily sell into a profitable market at the moment. We can't. So having that marketing hat on all year, having that relationship with your banker to make sure that, hey, I'm going in and talking to my Farm Credit banker today to make sure I know my options, know where they stand with me, where I stand with them, what the flexibility issues are, where my pain points are, how we can move forward. I can't stress that part enough.
Well, Matt, great to visit with you here at Commodity Classic. Thanks for spending a few moments with us.
Thank you, Bryce.